Welcome to my vlog with me talking about the theme. Should I say long awaited? Because I don't know. Some people were either waiting and not waiting for this film. I'm talking about the Eternals, the latest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that they decided to shoehorn in underground heroes from I don't know which era. I'm not an expert about it. I don't even know. I barely know about these Eternals, so forgive my ignorance. So okay. They're trying that territory, but man, ever since that first trailer, I wasn't so hooked. Not because they were trying to say that it's gonna be different or something like that. No, because for some reason I kind of found it very boring, and I was dreading. Oh man, this is gonna feel a little bit like if someone decided to make a really pretentious serious movie, but they decided to go in the Marvel route, which you know what, now that I think of it, actually felt more like a DC Universe movie more than a Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know, being kind of like moody, broody, taking it a little bit too seriously, so much that when they want to be funny, they just fall flat. Unless you try a little bit too hard, like they did with the Birds of Prey. But okay, that's just me. Okay, so but still, even before this movie got released, man, that the early reviews from critics were just baffling and saying that, oh, it's the worst. It's the worst MC Universe movie they have ever done. So much that it was between 60 or 50%. And so, but then I began to hear that there's some comments that they were actually kind of like saying positive, saying that, wow, this movie is, well, different, so it's good, or something like that, and so on, so on. So pretty much it's becoming this year's most divisive Marvel movie that they had. So, but still, I was kind of a little bit dreading for me watching this film, considering the tone that it had. It was like, oh my god, this is gonna go with it. Especially because I was a little bit raising my eyebrows, mostly because the one who directed this film was what was the name? Chloe Zhao. I think it was. I'm mentioning the name again. Yeah, Chloe Zhao, who this year she won the Oscar for both director and best picture for Nomadland. I never saw the movie. I never saw even inches about it, and that I blame the Oscars because these idiots didn't show the clips in the event. Oh, you just got, man. You just should have watched my rant of the Oscars from this year. Oh, but still, I just hope that the next Oscars is a train wreck, because I get a lot of fun again roasting if they go badly. Okay, but still, my biggest thought about that director, at least on first glance, is that I remember that I was chatting with someone on Facebook during the event, and and I did say that, okay, yeah, that person won because, well, she is not American. No offense, just in case. But then, wow, the one that replied to me, he just said that, oh, she won more because of her nationality instead of directorial talent. Well, I have no opinion about this because I haven't seen the movie. That's what I replied to him. So, but still, the little that I see, it did have some directional merit. So maybe that's the reason why they pick her. as a director and not as a, how can I say, a storyteller. That is just left for the writers. But still, the trailers look really ambitious. Really, so I decided to give the Eternals the chance that they deserve, at least, because my god, that being shredded not only by the critics but also being banned by most of eight Asian countries is not helping this case. So I finally saw it, and okay, how do I describe this film? How do I describe the Eternals? What can you say for a movie that is good in technical levels, but the execution is really boring? So, did I like this movie, or did I hated this movie? Because I admit that I was paying attention to the movie. I struggle with the 2.5 hours of two and a half hours of this film. I sense the long stretch pacing of this film. I sat through a lot of the troubles that this movie had. That at least kept me kind of entertained. I saw that it had some good aspects, but either way, that movie was really boring. It was boring. So, but does that merit to be does that deserve to be the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe after today? Here's the dilemma that I was thinking. I sat through Iron Man 3. I hated Iron Man 3. I sat through disappointments like Avengers Age of Ultron. This year, I sat through Black Widow. Black Widow sucked. Because as far as I can remember, it made the Taskmaster no favors. And it had this kind of like this hidden agenda that something felt a little bit shady on the production of Black Widow. So Black Widow became kind of the closest to hating it, but I still hate Iron Man 3 more. We also had Shang-Chi this year. Granted that, while Shang-Chi was a better movie, at least for standards of Black Widow, I had to sit with the annoyance of Awkwafina and the annoyance of Ben Diskin, whatever, the guy who played Ben Kingsley, playing this awful character who returned from Iron Man 3. So that made me question, where do I stand with the Eternals? Because it makes me think that I'd rather sit through an interesting, boring film than a movie that is downright insulting, like Iron Man 3, like Black Widow, and even Shang-Chi for better or for worse. Again, I don't hate Shang-Chi. I only don't like Awkwafina and Ben Kingsley. So that puts me into the dilemma saying that The Eternals is a boring film, but it has enough to make me feel fascinated with it. To the point that It's not even in my list of one of the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe. No, but far by that, because I think things that are worse. But there is a certain appreciation of what they tried. But in this case, I think that this movie has more humble mistakes than any other attempts. So here's the big question. What's the Eternals? Well, beats me. Like I said, I haven't read any of the Eternal comics. I never knew much about their existence. They were kind of like low-tier superheroes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They were created by Jack Kirby. And you know his history with the Marvel and all these things. I'm not gonna go too much into that, but let's go approach it at least as a movie. So it centers around this group of demigods, or that are kind of like godly superheroes that live through ever since the dawn of mankind, and they were sent by the superior gods known as celestials. Each of these demigods, they have kind of like eternal life, hence their names Eternal, and each one has kind of like their own superpowers. They're kind of like those actors that some of them I don't know. Well, for example, we have our protagonist named Cersei. She's played by I got IMDb to help me out. Gemma Chan. There is also that one called Icarus, who shoots laser from his eyes and can fly. He's almost like Superman. He's played by Richard Madden. We got, technically I'll say, kind of like a little bit of a more lamer version of Valkyrie from Thor, which is called Xena. She's played by Angelina Jolie, who I have kind of like a love-hate relationship with this actress. We also have Salma Hayek. What was it? Salma Hayek Salma Hayek played by playing a character named Ajax, kind of sounding like a cleaning supply. I don't know why. Okay, going through all this, there's also this guy who is kind of like a technological guy. There is this eternal youth girl named Sprite. By the way, Sprite like a pixie monster, not like the soda. There's also this guy named Kingo, played by Kumail Nanjiani, who he's an Indian guy who can shoot stuff from his hands. And there's also this deaf mute woman who has super speed. And there's also this guy who can control the minds of other people. The list goes on and goes on. If I want to get to every single one of them. Oh yeah, there's also this guy named Gilgamesh who can punch things. So on and so on. Man, then I didn't want to list them all, but I think that I technically did. Okay, but basically, these are demigods. They're sent to guide humanity, but at the same time they're sent there by the Celestials to kill off these these creatures named the Deviants, which kind of looks like monsters that pretty much for some reason it made me remind me of the monster from Avatar, not the Last Airbender, the James Cameron movies. I don't know why. So basically, yeah, they're there, they guide them, but of course they have their conflicts, and of course they say that no, the Celestials say we cannot interfere with them even when they're fighting, because we have our only rule that we cannot interfere unless they are dealing with deviants, which is the biggest reason why they didn't interfere or they didn't help when Thanos came and made the snap. Yeah, that's the reason why they didn't help. So in a way, it kind of makes them look like the villains. So, but what I just told you was snippets from the past, because then we jump to the present, in which apparently thinking that they got rid of all the deviants, they return. And so they decided that, okay, now we have to recruit our team so we can get rid of the latest threat, which is of course the return of the Deviants. And especially when they find out that one of them, the Salma Hayek character, she got killed, and they're absorbing her powers, in which she has the powers of healing. And from that, this turns into an hour and a half of recruiting. I'm not kidding. This turns into an hour and a half of going around the world finding their team. Until the next kind of like 45 minutes, it gets to a twist, and the twist technically is much more interesting than the plot that they just gave us. And man, it's kind of hard to describe, but still, it was boring as, and it didn't help that we technically don't care for the characters. I know that they wanted to say that they're demigods or something like that, but for demigods, they are kind of like the most wet blanket slates that I have ever seen, because they have no emotion. They exposition about the saying about, we act as a family, we are kind of like charisma or something like that, or something like that. Man, it's like someone inject them with technically the Keanu Reeves not giving a shit virus, because they are emotionless and cold. That it felt like I was watching a superhero version of Twilight. My God. And I'm just saying that all the actors deserve that. They deserve that thing, because I didn't care a lick out of them, and no one had chemistry. They all, mostly when they want to say what about the relation and all these things, they're just so cold and not charismatic enough for us to care. And when they begin to claim of their love to humanity and all these things, it didn't show. It kind of it's just there, just exposition. And in a movie that is mostly kind of like a visual medium, I didn't feel any of it. It was just kind of like, yeah. So why do you simply care? And okay, now that I think of it, if you guys care enough for humanity, shouldn't you guys have at least get involved with a titan that came from outer space and wipe out half of the universe? So much for caring demigods. So yeah, and speaking of about exposition about their, well, for lack of a better word, personality about the characters, during the whole journey, you kind of begin to see that they begin to stack up a lot of these plot points of almost every single character, but they don't kind of like cement into each other. For example, there's kind of like the kind of like this love, this romantic subplot between Cersei and Icarus, in which we just notice once we, well, when the movie said so, when it wants to get there. There's also Sprite, who she's also in love with Icarus, And of course she has this complex because she is angry that she stays like a kind of like a teenage girl body. She kind of like having this Peter Pan complex that it was mentioned. And honestly, it only shows up when the movie they kind of wanted to put up plot points, so we technically don't care. There was a little bit of promise between with Angelina Jolie character and the guy who plays Gilgamesh, in which one of them kind of apparently gets something that makes her go berserk and attack others. Because apparently Celestials also erased their memory, something like that. It's very convoluted, I'll say. But it technically doesn't help because we don't get enough time with them, and it also doesn't help that Angelina Jolie, basically, she tried her best. She's just a stoic character, so much that I don't feel nothing for her. And like I said, I did mention that I do have kind of like a love-hate relationship between Angelina Jolie because I don't think she is a bad actress, but ever since she played Maleficent and ruined it, I have a grudge against her because of that. Also there, what was it? The character played by Brian Tyree Henry, who played this character named Faustus. There was a little bit of a promise with this guy, but I think that that could have been into another movie, and I know that I might be spoiling it, but the movie kind of deserved it. In which this guy is almost like saying that, hey, I'm gonna present people technology little by little and all these things, and somehow then it shows that, oh, this guy lost faith in humanity because, well, Hiroshima. Because he introduced them the atomic bomb. This looks like an interesting concept, but it goes somewhere. No. The next time we see this guy, he's married with another guy and with a child. Yeah, no. It's not the gay thing about that I had a problem. Actually, these other countries had that problem, which I have no problem. The problem that I got is that they technically throw out of the window something very promising, in which is how technology kind of changes the perspective of one person, saying that they use the technology for evil. The guy should have been sounding like he doesn't trust in humanity anymore. But, and it had seen him kind of like trying to restore that faith. That could have been another movie and it would be great. And I said that because I went to Hiroshima. You saw my Japan videos? I went there. And I saw with my own eyes the destruction of the remains of what they left. So in a way, you kind of took the atomic bombing of Hiroshima very lightly when that event for Japan is basically their own 9/11. I know that I said something really harsh, but I want you to kind of think about it. That plot point could have been a little bit better. And of course, still jumping around a little bit more into the characters, the only thing that it was kind of a little bit close to a comic relief, and also another interesting character, is the Kumail Nanjiani thing, in which it is the indie character who he became kind of like an actor in Bollywood, and then during his whole journey, he just tags along, but he also brings this other guy who is filming everything to make kind of like a documentary of the Eternals, which honestly, this is kind of like the little chemistry that we had in this movie, because all the other character has zero chemistry. You don't believe their friendship. You don't believe their family and all these things. But guess what? This guy at the end of the movie is like, nope, I quit, and he doesn't shows up even when in the final battle. He's gone. So what was the point of that character? And then, of course, another interesting one that could have been between an anti-hero is the guy who basically resents the Eternal, because saying that we could have stopped these people from, committing all, the colonization and everything. But they were like, no, you must not interfere and everything. Then screw you, I'm out of here. And you know what? This guy is the one that makes the most sense of them all. Only for them, they say, saying that, hey, come back. No, I'm not. Then the creatures attack, and it's like, okay, show on. Couldn't it have been a little bit more sense in saying that you drag these deviants? So, okay, that's my rant on the characters. So there are some other elements that I want to praise/complain about this movie. If there's one praise that I can give about this movie, it's the cinematography, because of all the kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe that there is, that one is beautiful. It is a beautiful digital film with really well crafted CGI. Although a little bit the tone could make you a little bit raise your eyebrow, because it's a little bit, the tone is a little bit dark. It's a little bit dark, kind of dark grayish, making it look like more like a DC Cinematic Universe film than a Marvel Cinematic Universe. But either way, there's the scenes where they have kind of like this big landscape spectacles, or showing us through the cosmos, the star, the space, and even when they showcase the celestial beings, in which one of them is kind of like they're big giant that I don't remember the name, but it kind of looks like a bionicle robot. It's impressive. You can tell that they worked really hard on that part. And wow. And so much that this is practically a little bit of the reason why I was even engaged with the lore. Because the lore about, the relationship between gods and humans is fascinating. And I played enough Shin Megami Tensei in order to have this kind of fascination towards that mentality. I wanted to see a lot more. I really was invested in that. And it was perfect to to have this big giant cosmic scene that there was even a moment in which it makes it look like a more, how can I say, kind of like a more elaborate planetarium. That is probably what I would say that is one of the most kind of like the most visually stunning films I have seen, at least this year, kind of like in a big screen. No wonder this one is it is being pushed, to be watched kind of like in IMAX. I think it is. And so that one at least helps. It does work in this way, which also helps out sometimes in the action scenes, in which granted the action scenes weren't that bad. It wasn't spectacular, but they were well done. No need for so much shaky camera. So this is also one of the pros that I have to give. The monsters also look really good. Although, and I want to tell also that as a side note, I don't want to say that there was kind of like a pitiful moment that I find with the monster once the twist it is revealed. But unfortunately, the monsters were kind of like they're like, oh yeah, they're the main antagonist. More or less, because when the twist finally happens, then somehow the monster became a little bit more sympathetic. But that sympathy, it kind of drop out of the window because they were like, okay, they may be sympathetic, but still they're technically the bad guys. In which it made me realize that probably our heroes, they were supposed to be the bad guys. And you know what? I would have loved this in which, and I mean, I don't know, again, I don't know anything about the Eternals and as heroes or something like that, but if this could have been kind of like a different movie, I would have loved to see if the Eternals, they actually are, in fact, the bad guys. That would be kind of like a great twist. And you know what? I was actually half right on that point. Which, again, is interesting, but I had to sit through this long recruitment arc that it takes up kind of like 75% of the movie until we finally get to let's get into action and everything. Woo. So yeah, what else I can talk about this movie? Oh, apparently our main character, she also has a boyfriend, and apparently that boyfriend is technically the reason why she thinks humanity is beautiful in a way or another. That character, what was the name? I will get to it. It's called. He's played by Kit Harington. He plays a character named Dane Whitman. This guy, he was technically the bait and switch for the final post-credit scene, in which it is shown that he's another obscure Marvel character. I don't know who that is, but for the little research that I did, he is basically a Black Knight. And also there is a mid-credit scene in which they showcase another obscure character that I don't basically know, but apparently we got this, apparently the older brother of the Leprechaun, and the guy who apparently is gonna be sued by Nintendo because he's called Star Fox, and he's the brother of Thanos. And for a brother of Thanos, he's kind of handsome. I don't know if I can believe that he is the brother of Thanos. But who am I? I don't know. I'm not an encyclopedia of Marvel. But anyway, I think that's all the complaints and praises that I have to say about the Eternals. It's hard for me to say if I like it or not. But now that I think, but the best way I can say it is that it was boring. This movie was so boring that, but considering that I sat through, how can I say, the idiocy like Iron Man 3 and Black Widow, this movie could have been worse. It could have been worse. It is misguided. That's the only thing that I could say, and which pretty much kind of proves that just because you are different doesn't mean that it's exactly good. Which I praise it. I praise it that he wanted to try out a kind of like a different approach for a Marvel movie. But okay, maybe it failed on that one, trying to make it a little bit too serious, too dry, in which even the humor is so so the best, if I could describe it in kind of like in little words, is that I will say that the Eternals is mostly the Marvel Cinematic Universe trying too hard to be an Oscar-bait movie. Considering, of course, that the director made an Oscar bait movie called Nomadland, which again I never saw. Maybe I will see it if some enthusiasm goes through it. But honestly, watching this film really felt like a long eternity.